This is analysis with RStudio, specifically SSD for R with RStudio. So here we have an Excel document with some data on sleep. So we'll imagine that these are 3 weeks of sleep data. This is the first week, which is A, the second week, which is B, and the third week, which is C. We're collecting sleep data for 5 days per week as opposed to 7 days per week, as you can see. Now I'm going through the Excel document first because you have to tailor the Excel document in a very particular kind of way in order for RStudio to recognize what you've entered. So first you'll see that everything for the most part is not capitalized as far as like the sleep and the P sleep. The P here stands for phase. So you're going to have a particular dependent variable that you're studying. Here the dependent variable is sleep. And then B1 will be, that particular cell will be P, the letter P, and then the name of that dependent variable. So here P, otherwise known as phase of sleep. So you'll also notice that after I'm done with a particular week's worth of data collection, I will enter the letters NA afterwards. Now it has to be a capital N and then a capital A, not N/A, not N space A, not lowercase. It has to be capital N, capital A, that's it. Otherwise, RStudio will not recognize what you've entered into it. Now, that's not all as far as how you're going to be tailoring your Excel document. So here, we haven't saved this document yet. We'll go ahead and File, Save As, and we'll just name it, save it to the desktop. We'll call it Sleep. And this is very important, you cannot just save it just yet. You have to change the file format to CSV, delimited. So let's look for that here. We see that here, .csv right here, separated values .csv. That's the file format that this Excel document must be in order for RStudio to recognize what you're giving them. Right, so we'll actually save it here. Okay, there, .csv file. We'll save it to desktop. Save. Okay, we're good. Okay, that's fine. We'll close that out and we'll go into RStudio. Now, this is the environment for RStudio. And before we get started, we have to activate from the system library the packages we're going to be using. So first we're going to install SSD for R. I already have it installed, but I'll just show you what it looks like, SSD for R, right? So once that comes up, you're going to hit install, and then you go through the process of installing that. These commands are not going to work unless you have SSD for R installed. So in my case, I already have it installed, so you'll see it right here when I scroll down, SSD for R. Now when I click this box, SSD for R, other boxes will also be clicked off. So all those other boxes that are going to be clicked off by clicking SSD for R are boxes that I do indeed want to have clicked off. So I'll just do that right now. Click it. Okay, you see here, loading required package. So it's doing its thing. Give it a couple of seconds here. It does take a little bit of time. And now you see that it's ready. Whenever you see this this marker right here, it tells you that you're ready to enter your commands. Now that SSD for R is activated, and so too are other packages that I'll be working with in conjunction with SSD for R, I can get started. Now, in order to attach, or rather get the document that I just saved, the command would be capital GET CSV, and I'm going to open my parentheses, I'm going to hit enter. And when I do hit enter, this box shows up, and I'll look for that document here, which is right there, sleep. And I'll open that document. Okay, we see that it appears in the global environment now, okay, but it's not quite enough. I need to attach it. It's not attached just because it's there. So now the command, we can just view it, and we have to attach it. So this way, the RStudio knows that we're working with it. So the command for that is attach, open parentheses, SSD. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. So you already made a mistake. So you'll expect to make a lot of mistakes here. It's perfectly fine if you do. SSD. Okay. following object is mass from packaged data sets. I think that should be fine. Let's go ahead and view what we're looking at here. View, capital V-I-E-W, open parentheses, SSD. And there we have the environment. Okay, now we see that it does look appropriate because we want the NAs to be grayed out, grayed out, and grayed out. We see that the phases, and RStudio also recognizes that the phases changed. There's a gap between them, and the numbers look right, and everything looks right here. So now we can get to the analysis part. Now that we know we've gotten the CSV file, and we've attached the CSV file. Now we're reviewing it. It looks exactly the way that it did in the Excel document. So now we could proceed with some analysis. So let's start off with some descriptives. So we'll do AB descript. It's capital A, capital B, D-E-S-C-R-I-P. Then you're going to open parentheses. The command here will be the dependent variable here, which is sleep, comma, P sleep. Okay, we're going to see what comes up there. And we see, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so this way we can see what's going on. I do want to keep the above window open as much as possible there though. So we see here the number, the N is how many entries there are per phase. So we see there are 5 entries in the A phase, 5 entries in the B phase, and 5 entries in the C phase. So essentially we collect, in week 1 we collected 5 data points, 5 days worth of sleep data. Week 2 we collected 5 days worth of sleep data, and week 3 we collected 5 days worth of sleep data. The mean we see for week 1 is 5.6, and for week 2 is 7.6 hours of sleep per night, and for the third week it was 5.8. There's some other information here too. You see the 10% trim mean, you see the median. Those are all things that you've already learned. We're not going to go through the definitions of mean, median, mode, measures of central tendency, range, variance, standard deviation, measures of dispersion. Those are all things that I'm going to assume that you already know. But you do see the 10% trim mean here, the median for each of the weeks that we've collected data for, the standard deviations for each of the weeks, just the ranges, everything is, all the descriptive statistics that you might need are here. Now we might want to create a plot. So we also see on the right hand side here, there have been some plots created as far as like the ranges and the concentration of where the data is really. And we see that just visually speaking, we can see that there is during the second week here, this person got a lot more sleep than in the first couple, the first week and the third week. So we see that being the case here. So, and you could always export the graphs that you see on this side by just clicking export and either save as image or save as PDF. So it's no different from, you could also save it to your clipboard and paste it onto a different program. That's no different from other programs that you've used. So it's not anything new there. Now let's run a different kind of chart. We'll run, I'll give you the command first. It's A, capital B, lowercase p-l-o-t. We'll open parentheses. We'll type in sleep, comma, p sleep, comma. And we'll do day of what should we put in days? Close parentheses, comma, open parentheses, sleep, close parentheses, comma, open parentheses, and we'll write sleep data, close parentheses, and we'll just see what comes up here. See, what we have here is the information distributed in an appropriate single subject research design graph, right? So here on the right hand side, we see most of what we need here, but this isn't exactly complete just yet. So what we're going to do with this data is that we're going to make it more appropriate for single subject research design. You see that the phases, or the weeks in this case, are separated, so the lines don't connect with one another. You also see visually that the second week worth of data is much better as far as sleep is concerned than the first week and the third week, but we want to make this chart look as SSD friendly, single subject research design friendly as possible. So first what we're going to do is we're going to add some text as far as what is which phase. So the command is capital A, capital B, text, and then open parentheses, open quote, capital A, close quote, and close parentheses, and enter. And this is where we want to enter the letter A right there. That looks good. And because it looks good, I'm going to go over here and hit Y to accept, enter. Now I'm going to also enter the phases, the B and C phases. So what we'll do is capital A, capital B, text again, open parentheses, open quote, B, open, close quote, close parentheses, enter. And where do I want B? Right there. It looks a little bit lower than, a little bit higher than where the A is, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, as long as it's being communicated appropriately, doesn't matter where that particularly is. I like where it's placed. If you don't, you can always hit no and try again. But I like where it's placed, so I'm going to hit Y. And now, of course, C phase, capital A, capital B, lowercase text, open parentheses, open quote, C, close quote, close parentheses, enter. And now we place the C over here, which is much lower. Clearly, I'm not very artistic, but you get the point. This is the A phase, this is the B phase, this is the C phase. Although I should mention that in single subject research design, you would call it an ABA phase, but RStudio will not recognize a duplication of the A phase if you label it as such. So that's why you may actually see this phase labeled as ABA instead of ABC. But I'm going to assume that you're working primarily in the RStudio environment, in which case the phases will not be, phases have to be different in order for RStudio to recognize the differences. So I like where that is. You might not. And if you don't, you hit N, and then it goes away, you see? So I'm just going to do it again. A, capital B, text, open parentheses, open quote, C, close quote, close parentheses, enter. And I'll put it right there. Boom. Okay, so it looks like I'm still off, but it's fine. I'm going to accept the text, enter. Okay, that almost looks good, not yet done. So now I'm going to add some vertical lines that separate the phases. So the command for that is capital A, capital B, lowercase lines, and then I'm going to open parentheses, sleep, close parentheses, enter. Now I'm going to click the mouse where I want the line to be placed. It's a little bit of an inexact science, but I want it somewhere between this point and this point. I want it somewhere between the point where the A phase ends and the B phase begins. So I'm going to say right there. That looks good enough for me. Maybe I want it a little bit further to the left, so I'm not going to accept that line. Okay, and I'm just going to try and do that again. Do this again. Capital A, capital B, lines, open parentheses, sleep, close parentheses, enter. Now somewhere in between that, I'm going to click on that. That looks much better. Okay, so I'll have it there. That's a place that I'm comfortable having it in, so I'm going to hit yes. And I'm also going to separate the B phase and the C phase. In order to do that, capital A, capital B, lines, lowercase, open parentheses, sleep, close parentheses, enter. And I'm going to put that line right between where the B phase ends and the C phase begins. And that also looks good. I'm happy with how that turned out. And at this point, this looks pretty good as far as the single subject research design graph or chart that you might have to create. So this is good enough, and you'll be able to export this as an image or PDF or copy to clipboard, as I've mentioned before. Now, well, let me just accept that line and move forward. Okay. So now we're going to run a different kind of test as far as other. We're going to do the A phase mean. So we're going to capital A, capital B, STAT. Open parentheses, sleep, comma, P, sleep, comma, open quote, A, close quote, comma, open quote, MEAN. Okay, and let's see where that takes us. Okay, the mean there is 5.6. I'm going to click the mouse where I want it. Okay, not too happy with that. So I'm going to hit no on that. I'm going to just run that same command again. Now here you can use the arrow key up for the same command. So this way you don't have to type it all over again. Click enter. And I think I'm going to put it right there. Still not happy with it. Let's try that again. I'm going to hit no. Hit the arrow key up, enter, and let's see if I can get it right. There. Okay, that I do like. Okay, so that's the mean for that particular phase. I'm going to hit yes on that. Now, what I'm doing right now isn't necessary for the most part in single subject research design graphing. This is a little bit above and beyond what you might need to do, but it's better to know it than not know it, right? So next, what we'll do is we're gonna do a little bit of a cheat code here. We're gonna hit the up arrow key, and instead we're just gonna change A to B, so we don't have to type the whole command all over again. And let's see what that does for us. So for the B phase, the second week, the mean is 7.6, and let's see where we want to enter that in, if we can really just get it in there perfectly. Don't like that at all. Let's try that again. Up arrow, same thing. I'll put it right there. I do like that. Okay, that comes out well. So I'm going to hit Y to accept that, and then I'm going to do that, the same command for the last week, just to see, okay, which is the mean is 5.8. Let's see here where we can put that. Let's put it right there, and boom, I do like where that shows up. And we see that the average sleep between the first week, the second week, and the third week is showing up here as well. It's very clearly. Now again, this is not something that you'll necessarily need to include in your single subject research design graph, but I did want to give you a little bit more than what you might, a little bit more than the minimum, if you will. So here you have more of a refined version of the single subject research design graph. And if you'd like, you can export this as an image, a PDF, or copy it to clipboard, as I've mentioned before. Now, moving forward, let's do a couple of different things. We could also add text, okay? So if I were to write AB text, AB txt, same thing as I've done before. I could write mean equals 7.6. All right, so I'll show you what I mean by this as far as what it's going to look like. 7.6. That's for the C phase. Oh, that didn't work out. I did something wrong, and that's perfectly fine. It's going to find that this happens quite often. AB text, open parentheses, open quote, mean equals 7.6. Okay, now where do I want that? Oh, right there. See, this way we have that information communicated there. Actually, no, that's not. It's not right there. Let's do this again. 7.6 is for the B phase, so I'll put that underneath here. So this way it's right there. I do like what that does. And the next is for the C phase, it was 5.8. So we'll do mean equals 5.8, enter, and for that I'll put it above. That's for the C phase, and let's look back real quick. For the A phase, the first week was 5.6, so we'll do the same thing again. We'll just accept that text first, then we'll go up. I'll put 5.6, and we'll put that right here for the A phase, and that's perfectly fine. So I'll accept the text, everything that's there. Again, this is well beyond what you might usually need to include for your single subject research design graph, but again, I want to give you a little bit more than the minimum. I'm obviously not going to go through everything there is inside of RStudio, but this hopefully will serve as more of an introductory session to RStudio. Right, so you have everything that you need and more in regards to single subject research design graphing here. Again, you can export, image, PDF, copy to clipboard, as I've mentioned several times already. I'm going to accept this text and move forward. Oh, sorry. Yeah, already accepted that text. That's why I got an error. Okay, so now we're going to go into a different type of command here. We're going to do a regression, A-R-E-G-R-E-S. Again, it's capital A, lowercase r, lowercase e, G-R-E-S, open parentheses, S-L-E-E-P, comma, P, S-L-E-E-P, comma, open quote, A, and the regression line for the first phase is right there, right? So we see that over the course, what does this graph tell us, right? This graph tells us that during the first week, from Monday to Friday, if you will, it appears that the number of hours slept is trending downward, right? That's what the dotted line here suggests. That's a trend line, if you will. That's what it's called. It's a trend line, right? So we'll do the same thing for the next phase, for phase B, which is the second week. And we see that during the second week, the hours of sleep is trending upward, right? And this is again for the second week. So we see that trend line, that dotted blue line right there is trending upward. And let's do the same thing for the final, the third week. We see that during the last week, the hours of sleep is trending downward. Now, all three of these graphs you'll be able to export and include in your paper. So in addition to the single subject research design graph with all three phases, you can have these regression line, trend line graphs included in your paper as well. I don't know if you might get extra credit for that or not, but it's just something to think about. Let's move on to some standard deviation graphing. So here the command will be SD1, which means one standard deviation. I'm going to open parentheses, SLEEP, comma, P, sleep, comma, quote, A, unquote, comma, quote, COUNT, unquote, comma, quote, sleeping, close quote, comma, quote again, sleep data. Okay. And let's see what that gives us here. So we see a standard deviation band graph right here over the course of this particular week. Now this is based on the A phase, right? So from the A phase, do we see during the B phase how many times is there more sleep that's experienced outside of one standard deviation, right? So here we see that this is the confines of the standard deviation. Just for the A phase, you have to ignore the other phases here because we're only talking about the A phase here. So within the A phase, we have two outliers, right? One outlier and two outliers when we're talking about one standard deviation. Now, this is let's do for the B phase. Okay, do that. Count. Okay. So now again, this is only for the B phase. We're going to ignore the data for the first week and the third week. So here, during the second week, how many outliers do we have? Once again, we have two. Here we have one outlier, okay, because it falls outside of the confines of one standard deviation. And here we have another outlier because it also falls outside of the confines of one standard deviation. You're not gonna often use one standard deviation. I think it's important to sort of understand that. Very rarely would you be doing that, but it's still kind of important to know that because the command that you're going to be using is SD2, right? But let me just do the third week first, and then we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So during the third week, we see we only have one outlier, which is the first day of the third week, right? So this is for the C phase, the third week. Again, we're going to ignore the A phase and the B phase for this because we're just focusing on the third week here, and we see that during the third week, only one outlier exists, okay? Now, what we're really going to be doing, and this is where the science really takes place, not that it's very different, we're going to go back to the A phase, the first week, and instead of SD1, you're going to do SD2. Now, this is where you're really doing some good research here because you want to see, how outside it falls. So here for the first week, we see that there are no outliers within two standard deviations. The key here is that it's two standard deviations. When you're talking about the social sciences, you're going to be really operating within two standard deviations. If you happen to be watching this and you are part of the physical sciences, then you'll be operating in the realm of three standard deviations, not two, right? So for two standard deviations, we see that there are no outliers in the A phase. Let's do the same thing. We're going to pull up that old command by hitting the arrow key up. We're going to change the A to a B, and let's see what we get. No outliers for the second week either. Again, you see that there are outliers, but we're focusing solely on the second week because we've asked RStudio to look only at the second week. And let's see if there are any outliers at the C phase. Enter, and we see that there are also no outliers during the 3rd week. So it's pretty consistent data, not all over the place. Even though graphically speaking it does look like it's all over the place, it's really not when you take into account the other 4 data points per week. So that's standard deviation 1 and standard deviation 2 for all 3 phases there. Let's just try and do, for the people who happen to be in the physical sciences, do SD3. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, SD3 does not exist in SSD for R. I do apologize for that. So SD1, one standard deviation and 2 standard deviations is the extent of usage with this particular package SSD for R. So now let's assume that we're done doing everything that we needed to do. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 standard deviation graphs. We've had 3 other graphs for regression, so 9 total, and then 10 total graphs because of that original graph that we did that had all 3 phases and the mean lines and all that good stuff, the lettering and the vertical lines separating. So this is a quick way to get 10 graphs in your paper and really have a lot to analyze and discuss there. Now that we're done here, we want to detach everything here. So the command here is lowercase detach, open parentheses, SSD, enter, and boom, we are done. That's it. That's analysis with RStudio. Thank you.